Hi, I wanted to make a video in regards to the red-blue button dilemma, in regards to how we've been having this discussion for a very long time through media. And while the discussion has been going on and it's been a bit of kerfuffle, and people will very much be adamant about which side they're on regarding this dilemma, it's funny to me because we've already had long discourse regarding this in specifically horror movies. So for anybody who's wondering what the red blue button dilemma is, I will explain it, but I do suggest going and doing some prerequisite reading. Go watch a video on it, go watch a TikTok or something. It's been discussed. But to explain it briefly, the blue versus red button dilemma is a moral thought experiment where a global uh, vote is held. If 50% of people or more press the blue button, everybody lives. In a situation where less than 50% of people press the blue button, only people who press the red button survive. So with this, the general rational thought process is everybody lives if you just press the red button, so just press the red button. But unfortunately, in part because it's a bit of a reading comprehension test, and partly because blue button appears to be a moral dilemma, uh, people will be pressing the blue button. So if you're pressing the red button, are you murdering? I don't really care about that. Honestly, it's a bit of a weird question to ask, and I don't think it does much academically. And unfortunately, people who think that they understand game theory have very strong opinions when, in fact, this is like a post-grad game theory question, where then we're having to put values on the value of your life versus the life of others, and a personal Nash equilibrium where that's different for each person. So how much I value my own life versus the lives of others uh, differs from you. And then also my understanding of how many people are going to press the blue button versus the red button differs from you. Uh, I don't care. What I do want to discuss is that we've been having this discussion for a very long time, and it's been done through horror movies. When I'm talking about horror movies, I'm not talking about the button. I'm not talking about movies where it's a very much has like prisoner dilemma situations put in it, like Saw. There's like Circle 2015. There are movies where the conceit is game theory, but it's not actually regarding this particular situation. What I'm talking about is Spooky House. So Spooky House is a classic horror movie. There's a spooky house. Give me the draw tool. Thank you. And it exists, and everybody knows that Spooky House is spooky. You can tell because the ghost has angry eyebrows. And if you go to Spooky House alone, you'll die. Sometimes when I say spooky house, I don't necessarily mean it has to be a spooky house. This can be, a killer. This doesn't have to necessarily be a house. This can be a graveyard or some other abandoned warehouse or something. Basically, we have this idea that if you try and deal with spooky house alone, or you just go to this location, you're going to get murdered. So what we end up in is a situation that's very similar to, let's do this properly, to our red blue button dilemma, where we have four options. So for you, you can choose to deal with Spooky House. That could be entering Spooky House, like we trying to kill the killer. That could be like, calling the police, but gaining the ire of Spooky House. Or we can ignore Spooky House. And everybody else can also, deal with it and ignore it. So in horror movies, typically the standard procedure is to ignore the spooky house. It's what's happening when you, as the protagonist, came into this small town. This results in nothing, but actually some kids die. So this is this is what's actually happening is spooky house isn't that dangerous. You don't have to go to the outskirts of town and go to the house. But some kid's dog ran into the yard and then the kid disappeared forever. Um, but in a situation where most people are choosing red, this is what we have. You choose to ignore it and everybody else choose to deal with it. Um, say you're not helping. This is actually a kind of a weird one, but you're just an asshole. Whoops. You choose to deal with it and everybody ignores, you die horrifically. And if everybody tries to deal with it, then we have a good movie. We have no more Spooky House until the sequel. The sequel, obviously, Spooky House has come back. The killer that we definitely killed has returned, but whatever. Horror movie sequels are a completely different discussion. So, in this situation, it's very similar to the red blue button situation, where if you ignore it, you're fine. Um, and if you deal with it, you potentially die. And I'll discuss that these odds are a bit more dubious. We don't necessarily know how to deal with it. We don't necessarily know if you're completely safe if you ignore it, those sort of things. But uh, this is the situation that we're in very often with a classic horror movie. Regarding a movie, two things have to be addressed by every horror movie. It's first, why hasn't the authority figures, a mayor, a sheriff, the FBI, dealt with the spooky house? If this is the sort of question that people who uh, look at the red blue button and go, why doesn't everybody just vote blue? Ask. Secondly, we also have to deal with why are the protagonists interacting with spooky house when they can just ignore it. And this is also a question. This is a question that people who like to press the red button ask. It's like, it's just a spooky house. It's on the outskirts of town. It's not doing any harm. Um, why are they even going into the house? And this is especially true when it's like, oh no, six, co-eds have gone into the place where uh, a serial killer has killed people previously. Why are you camping in those woods? Like, why have you walked into the house, went, oh, this has terrible vibes, and not just walked out? And the answers to this might be, oh no, the door's now locked. It might be, uh, horniness. It might be a lot of different things. Um, Additionally, with horror movies, we've been iterating on this basic example a lot, so they find new and interesting ways to make it surprising. Horror is often based on surprise, but is also based on tropes, so you know what's meant to happen, so then they can surprise you. So the odds are more dubious. In the original, this was a 50-50. But maybe it's not actually 50-50 in Spooky House. Maybe it's you have to have a certain number of people. Maybe it's you need to have a percentage. Maybe it's actually a little bit of a mystery where you need to figure out how to defeat the house, be it like a wooden stake, a silver bullet, you need to use the house's weapons against it. Depending on whatever the movie is, might change the odds of that. We might have the odds where, someone who is actively ignoring it dies. This almost always happens. Usually, like an authority figure, like, oh no, the cop who was going to save us is now dead. So maybe ignoring it isn't actually safe, like it is in the red button situation. So we have to deal with a bunch of different things, and these all differ based on the theme of the movie and how many times we've seen this type of movie before. Um, I do also want to note that this is an iterative process. So with the original idea of the red button versus blue button, I've seen the discourse and it's typically one time. So it's okay, we're in a society where for some reason we have to do this hypothetical situation and then it happens. In real life, because time continues, and in horror movies, it's an iterative process. So we have to make this decision of, okay, are we going to deal with Spooky House? Are we going to deal with this killer every single time that someone dies? either to the killer or like goes missing, or some upstart from the city comes into our small town and questions why we haven't dealt with this house. Uh, Typically, there are actually two situations that I have to discuss here. Uh, with these classic horror movies, we're in a situation where they have consistently chosen to ignore it. Um, this is perhaps because, and usually, they reached the first decision and a bunch of people died. So the people who are left are the sort of people who would press the red button. They're people who are scared, self-preserving, rational people who understood it and just went, no, I'm not going to deal with that. Psychopaths who just don't care about the lives of other people. And then this is only made worse by the genocide, right? If you have a situation where we went through red, blue button and a bunch of people died from blue, blue is obviously the wrong choice. We should continue ignoring the the dilemma and just continue pressing the red button. And with this being a situation, I mean, the tropes from a horror movie. I don't need to necessarily say them, and I'll say a few of them. You got the sheriff who turns a blind eye. You got the old woman who grabs you by the shoulders and looks you in the eye and stares into your soul and says, "We don't go there." We got the dumb kid who's like lost his ball over the fence, or his dog ran into the house and he's dead. We got the glasses wearing college kid who understands the situation but like refuses to help anyways. We've got these tropes, and it's because they're the sort of people who, in the director or writer's situation, are the sort of people who are pressing the red button. Interesting, we also have movies regarding blue button societies. So these are societies that everybody press the blue button, but then there are outsiders. Perhaps they just know who pressed the red button, or worse, they were like assuming. So these movies are a status quo that like questions outsiders. This often escalates to a point where they are trying to convert all of the outsiders or just kill them. And this basic concept of an irrational in-group versus a rational outsider exists across a lot of themes. It's not necessarily always true horror. I mean, Stepford Wives, Get Out, Midsommar. Basically, these like movies that are horror movies because you reach this point, very pivotal, where the protagonist realizes that they're looking at, a death cult, and tries to go to their loved one to try and start a resistance. They try and go from dying horrifically to um, dealing with the situation. And they find out that their loved one is also part of the cult. Um, and they're not going to be able to escape anymore. They're going to have to deal with the issue. And then how these movies end, they either, join it or escape or whatnot. But it's more often than not when we're talking about that. I mean, I mentioned Stepford Wives and Get Out because it's often a minority, be it women or blacks in those two issues respective, where um, they're trying to deal with a irrational majority. I don't know. We've been having this discussion for a while, and when I heard these discussions and people trying to convince people one way or another, it's not easy, and it's interesting because we've been discussing it for 50 years in movies and even longer in literature. But I just think about when you're watching something like there's often a prisoner's dilemma in a lot of like crime movies. If you're paying attention to the red blue button dilemma, you'll see this a lot in zombie movies, for example, where the people who are surviving in the zombie universe, according to the writer, are the sort of people who are self-preserving, rational, psychopathic, and you're having to deal with a situation where if you all have to come together for, some kids not to die, it becomes harder and harder as you get deeper and deeper into a zombie universe. Yeah, uh, I hope this is enlightening to someone, and thank you for allowing me to just draw in Microsoft Paint and call that a YouTube video. But I appreciate anybody who watched this, and if you have thoughts, feel free to hit me in the comments. But I appreciate you.